Welcome to the Bread Slice, Christian podcast where we have real conversations with real people about having Jesus in everyday life. Today, I'm your host, Seth. You might be wondering, where's Alex? Well, he is the guest. I'm going to be interviewing Alex. He's done such a great job interviewing other people, curious about their stories. And we were texting back and forth, and I said, Alex, I'm curious about your story. You should have a podcast where you can share a little bit about your life, your thought processes, so your audience can get to know you a little better.
Yeah, and the moment you suggested, I was like, yes, because Seth always has the best questions.
Yeah, well, hopefully I can live up to the expectation today.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've known you, Alex, for coming on 6 years, and I've been able to see changes, just different morphines and things in your journey. And so I've witnessed some of it. I've heard about the stuff in the past. I think my timeline is a little wonky. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get a little taste of the timeline.
All right.
And I just want you to tell us about your story. We don't have to go in we don't have to be super linear.
Yeah.
But I was going to try and start us off with just tell us about where you were born, what the kind of environment was with beliefs, religion. Was that good for you? Did you believe in God early on? Yeah, if you kind of...
Okay.
We'll start there. There's a couple questions there.
That's a great question, actually. And it does make me think I feel like my childhood was kind of a blur here and there because we always moved a lot. Since the moment I think I was 4 years old. No, it was earlier than that. I was born in, Campeche. It's right on the peninsula. And then we moved back to Morelos, which is like in the middle of the country. And I think at 4, we went back and had my brother. Like when I was 4 years old, he was born. And the time between there is kind of blurry because, I was just such a little kid. And I remember my brother being born. And I remember when my mom was taken to the hospital when she was pregnant. And then I remember her coming back with the baby. I was like, oh, well, that's my brother. And then I remember having my birthday at my grandma's house in Campeche. And the memories there are always really happy because my grandparents were always super loving. And I always had fun with them. I feel like they spoiled us a lot. And my memories from that place are very fond. And I see pictures and I kind of put a memory back, but it's kind of a blur because, like I said, we moved a lot.
Yeah.
And the faith, I remember being confirmed. I forgot how old I was, but I remember I was probably 6 or 7 when I got my confirmation. We grew up Catholic. Always Catholic.
And for those listening, Campeche, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Campeche? And that's in Mexico. I don't know if everyone's going to know that right away.
That's in the peninsula.
Okay.
It's Yucatan, Cancun, and that peninsula right there.
Okay.
So I remember growing up Catholic. I don't remember much about, the teachings. I just knew that people went to church and you listened to the priest and you sometimes can take a communion. My mom would never let me take communion for some reason. But I don't think she even took communion ever. But growing up like that, I had my confirmation. I was baptized when I was a baby, so I don't remember that. Then I got my confirmation, and then I got. What does you do after catechism? Isn't that confirmation?
I think it's confirmation.
Because I had 3 major things in the Catholic Church. So one was my baptism, and I remember something in the middle, which I thought was confirmation, and then actual confirmation because I went to catechism for that.
Okay.
And I never understood why.
Yeah.
So I always went and took the class, and I was like, okay, what is this? I have to take this in order to go tell the priest my sins.
Okay.
And I went through the class.
What age were you around this time?
I think I was in 5th grade.
Okay.
When I'm taking catechism.
Like a 10, 11 ish.
5th or 6th grade, something like that when I'm taking catechism. And my brother, 4 years younger, I remember we used to walk 2 miles in hilly terrain to go to catechism classes on Sundays. And I remember the lady, she was super nice, and then she did her best to teach us some of the stories in the Bible, but I never understood why. You know, you're a kid, you don't really care.
Yeah.
It was a pain for me to go there. It's like I don't want to just walk 2 miles and then just so this lady can say that I'm okay to take catechism. You know, I never understood why. And then when it was time for me to do my first confession, I remember being so scared. I was like, what am I going to tell the priest? Like, he's going to yell at me. He's going to be mad. And at the time I knew, I forgot. I stole something, but I don't remember what it was. And I was feeling guilty about it. And I said, I went to the priest, and the priest is like, okay, tell me your sins. She just sat there and like, tell me your sins. And I was so nervous that I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know where to begin. And then he like rolls his eyes and sighs and is like, okay, do you repent for all this and this and that? And like, yeah. Do you do this? Like, do you agree that you did wrong and all this and that? And yeah. Like, okay, then go pray 350, Heavenly Fathers and 150 Hail Marys. I don't know. I'm exaggerating, but that's go pray this amount of prayers. And then I was like scared. I'm like, because I knew that I stole something, but I finally said, yeah, I stole something, and I feel really bad about it. It's like, we shouldn't take things from or other people, and go. It didn't feel personal, It felt like this guy doesn't want me here. It's just so I was like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand religion.
Yeah.
And especially, I talk about this experience that I had in church one time. It was like the town's celebration of the saint of the town, and we went to church that day. And at this point, I think I'm like in 4th grade. I remember that. Fourth. Like I said, all of that is a blur, kind of.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing like the saints, like the statues in the Catholic Church, and they look scary. Like especially like the picture of Jesus, like they made him really scared with blood in his eyes and blood coming out of like his mouth, and there's people crying, there's people wailing, there's people going up to the saints and grabbing their clothes and like rubbing their face with it, and I was so scared. Like, I was thinking, why are we here? This is so scary. I want to be out of here. And I was telling my dad, I'm really hungry. Let's get out of here, because I just wanted to get out of there. And I remember my dad very cynically saying, oh, a person doesn't survive only on bread alone, but on the word of God as well. Because my dad, back in the day, he was also a skeptic and a cynic about it. Yeah. And I think it was my mom who dragged us to church. And I didn't understand that. And it was really scary to me. So that was basically my childhood in relation to the Catholic Church. I never understood why.
Just went through the motions. It was kind of just a very cultural.
Yeah. Everybody did it. Yeah. You do it around Christmas. You do it for special holidays. You do it for baptism, but that's it.
Yeah. No explanation as to why we're doing this.
Nope.
What's the point of it all?
Exactly. I was just like, this is scary. Why do people do this?
Yeah. I noticed from the beginning, you perhaps had you had questions though.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a curious mind.
Yeah.
I mean, were you curious about what it was?
Yeah. I was like, why? Just we know the stories, and I kind of and I think you asked if I knew God was real. Like I pretty much in my heart I knew that God was real, but it seemed really distant and very disrelational, like not personal at all. Yeah. It just seemed that, okay, if there's a God, he probably wants us to do all these things in order for us to be okay with him. But I also thought, well, if God, because my mom always told us that God is good and God loved us. But I didn't understand, okay, and I always thought, okay, well, if God is loving, then why are people like this? Why are the people that are going to church to pray to God or to show God that they believe in him? Why are they so weird? Why is it so scary?
Yeah.
So I think, I think that growing up, like, God was kind of scary, but at the same time, I was always curious. Like, I always knew that God was real, but I just didn't know. I didn't understand people.
Maybe this will cause us to jump around a little bit, but this is another question that I was thinking is, what was the first time you think you experienced God? Or like you maybe had an experience of I don't know, God was saying something to you, or just a spiritual experience?
Um, this is kind of weird because it was probably the first time I encountered like dark forces in my life, and somebody kind of prayed it away. But I remember as a kid, one time I got really sick, and I didn't know why. Like my mom didn't know why. I didn't have any symptoms of like a cold or anything weird, but I started feeling really sick, and not just physically, but like spiritually sick. I felt like I didn't want to just get up. I felt like I just started feeling like it's hard to explain because it was so long ago as well, and I didn't know. I wasn't aware of my own feelings, and my mom knew of this guy who was kind of like a what do you call it? Like a shaman, kind of like
Yeah.
a spiritual person. But he always prayed. He prayed to God. He prayed to Jesus, and he prayed to the saints because Mexico is heavily Catholic.
Yeah.
So I remember my mom took me to the guy, and the guy performed like a lot of prayers over my head, and he rubbed an egg all around my body, kind of like praying, and then at the end he breaks the egg and puts it in a cup of water, in a glass of water, and then he starts looking at the egg, and then he starts saying like, well, there was a woman who unknowingly put some kind of spell on me. That's what he was saying. It's like, and this woman doesn't know that she is a powerful witch or has some witch powers. She didn't know. She was not aware, apparently. And this happened like a few days ago in the city of Jojutla, because it was like a city that was like 20 minutes away, and we used to go there to do some shopping and came back to a small town. And I remember it was a cell phone place because my mom had one of those old cell phones, like a Nokia, like before the Nokia, like the big ones, kind of like after the 80s, they kind of got a little smaller. So we went there to pay the bill, and apparently the woman was working at the cell phone place. And apparently through her eyes, or like was staring at me for very long, and then she put something on me. That was the explanation that I got. And I remember after that, after the guy prayed over me and then broke the egg and everything, I just felt normal again.
Huh.
Yeah, and I didn't think much of it. I was happy that I felt normal, and I just continued my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how I just thought of a song, The Shadow Proves the Sunshine.
Mm.
It's from a Switchfoot song, but
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think that's, sometimes it is the darkness or the shadow that can prove that the sunshine is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So right away I'm getting the impression that religion and then actual, like, God were kind of, like, disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, church was something you did. It was kind of confusing. You knew God loved you, but you were maybe experiencing God in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Being kind of healed by the shaman of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Well, healed by God, but healed through maybe his prayers and things.
Yeah.
Okay, so then tell us. When did you move to the States?
I was 14 years old when I came to the United States. And by that time, I lived most of the time in the middle of Mexico, this state called Morelos. And we went back and forth through the times. But in the state of Morelos, we always moved around in different houses because we rented. So we would live a couple years in 1 year or a year and a half in one house. And then we would have to move to a different part of town, to a different house. And then same thing. We moved around a lot. And I never really had a sense of belonging either. I never had like kids that I grew up with. Like I didn't have that. And I came here at the time we moved back to Campeche, and then my parents came to the United States. We lived in Campeche with our grandparents, me and my brother, for almost 2 years. It seemed longer than that because being a kid, your time is different. The time perception. But then I remember that was the hardest part because moving back to Campeche is when I made a lot of friends, and when I felt like part of a community, because I had our friends were really tight. Like I had a big group of friends, and we're all super tight. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, now we're gonna take you to the United States," and then again the moving, and that was the hardest thing I think, because it's at 13, 14, I was so attached to my friends and to that way of life. To me, it was simple, like carefree. I went around on the bike whenever I wanted. I hung out with my friends whenever I wanted. I went to school. I never did anything in school. My parents were mad at me because I had super bad grades, just enough to pass.
Yeah.
But they're like, "Oh, this is not enough." But I had a lot of fun, and I honestly, it hurt so much, but at the same time, like in the back of my head, and probably in deep inside my heart, I knew that God had me, and He kind of like motivated me through the hard parts. Because I remember thinking, okay, the time to move to the United States is coming, because I knew when my mom was coming back to get us. And then I remember thinking, well, I guess life wouldn't be fun if there wasn't so much change. Like me trying to justify the continuous change in my life. It's like, but then we moved. We went back to Morelos for a few things for like a month, and that was just so hard. Like the moment I went back to where I used to live, it just hit me. It was like I probably never see my friends again. And I was thinking, then I want to come back to the United States. I want to work really hard. I want to make some money, and then I want to go back. Like
Oh.
probably 3 years max, and then I'm gonna go back. And I just that never really happened. That I came here, and we didn't have internet back then. I had to buy this card so I can dial it, and had a certain amount of money that would allow me to make an international call to my friends for a certain amount of time. And I'm a kid. I don't have money. So I have to rely on my parents to buy me that. And my parents have always been really shrewd with their money. So even if I asked them to do it at least once a week, they would say no.
Yeah.
Like, well, you will get you one like once a month, and that's not enough to keep a relationship with anybody, you know. And I kind of had like a girlfriend, and that was like always wanted to call her or call my friends, but I think I was forced to disconnect because I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I never knew this about you, Alex.
Yeah.
I never knew. I guess I never thought about how hard that would have been, and especially, I mean, you're 14 years old, and they talk about, there's that like period, kind of, that early teenage years when you're no longer really as attached to your family, and you're beginning to, develop your own communities. You're getting close with your peers. What your peers think of you is a lot more important than what your family, kind of those types of things.
Yeah.
So those are really becoming, in a way, your new family, and having to leave that all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that, how did you respond to that, once you came to the States? I mean, you're thinking like, oh, I'm just going to go back in 3 years. But did it kind of create a hardness, like a shell,
Definitely.
were you kind of, not very interested in like making friends, that kind of thing, once you came to the States? Or
I was a little bit excited in a way as well, because like I always saw, like I was just such a huge hip hop fan, and then I come in here and I look at on TV and there's like music, and they're like, oh, these channels have to, because back then in Mexico I had like 4 channels, and then I come here and there's like hundreds of channels, and there's music channels, and there's hip hop in Spanish, because I was just so into hip hop in Spanish. And then I feel like that I come here, and that's what a lot of the people that come here from Mexico try to hold on to their identity. And then I started acting like that, acting gangster. Like, okay, now I'm a Mexican living in America, so I have to act accordingly. I have to act out. I have to have like the Mexican flags, and I have to dress like a cholo, with the baggy pants and the jerseys, and that are super super large and all of that. And I remember it was the first day when we finally got here to Wisconsin, and then one of my uncles came and gave me a bunch of clothes. He's like, oh, you can have this. And my uncle is really tall, and so I had like super baggy clothes, and I'm like, yeah, I'm dressing like a gangster already, first day in America. And then my parents wanted to put me in school, of course. And I said, no, I don't want to go to school. Like at 13, 14 years old, like I don't want to go to school. I just want to work, and I want to get a truck, and I want to go back. That was my plan. And my parents were like, no, you're going to go to school because you need to learn to speak English. I'm like, fine. So I went to school, and it's just a complete culture shock. Like, there were other Mexican kids in there that were in the English learning program, but every kid was from like a different part of the country in Mexico, so we couldn't really relate in our ways. I made some friends, of course, like two or three friends that I kind of became tight with, but outside of high school, I never saw them. Like, I didn't have a social life. I went to school, and then yeah, my parents would take us to Funset, you know, play video games for a little while, or see other things. But then nothing. You go back home and you don't have internet. Nothing. No way to really connect with anybody else. And I feel like that's when I started getting a taste of depression. I didn't know what it was, and then all of a sudden I'm getting this empty feelings. Like, I'm empty. I don't have a personality. I'm starting to feel weird, and I didn't know that was depression. I'm like, what is this feeling? Why do I feel this way? And it became even harder for me in school to relate to people. So I started acting out even more. In because when you are depressed, you feel weak, right? You feel weak. You feel alienated. You get all this emotion, especially when you're like a teenager. And like I said, I didn't know what it was, so it was really hard for me, really hard for me. And at some point, I was like, "Who am I even? Like, what is this?" And I remember I had a job. I was 16 by then now, and then I got a job at Outback Steakhouse as a busboy. And I remember even working, feeling, "Why do I feel this way? Why me?" And it just felt. I felt kind of like I started to despair a little bit. But then again, hiding behind that hard personality, that gangster personality, that hip hop personality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why the word is coming to mind, but like almost you felt maybe like an exile. You felt like exiled
sort of.
out of your home. You everything that was important to you was kind of gone. And I get the impression too that you didn't really have anyone to. I mean, maybe you didn't even have words.
Nobody to confide in.
To confide, but to express how you're feeling. Like,
Uh-huh.
I feel lonely, or I feel like, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
like, did your parents ever ask you, like,
Nope.
how are you feeling?
Nope. Never. And I always say that my parents don't even say "I love you," like still to this day, because I feel like, they're old school Mexican who did their best to raise me, but also I feel like their parents were never loving, or I feel like that's I don't know if it's part of the culture. Hopefully not anymore, but my parents, at least, they never really got that from their parents either, so they don't know how to express it. When you have a kid, you grow it up, you kind of spoil the kid, and then you say, oh, the kid's so cute and all that. But then once you grow up, it becomes kind of weird. You don't really say "I love you."
Yeah.
It's either correction, or they just ask you if you're hungry.
Yeah.
That's like a mother's way of telling, oh, we love you, like, show affection. So, oh, are you hungry? Did you eat? It's not, like I said, to this day, my mom doesn't say "I love you."
Wow.
And I try to break that now, because now that I know Christ and Christ's love, it was real hard for me to actually open up to them, because the door was kind of shut completely.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, I don't want them to die, and never for me to express love to them, and then them to express it back to me. So every time I go see them, I go and hug them and kiss them on the cheek, and my mom and my dad. And then I always tell them, where's my kiss? Because even though it's awkward, still awkward for them, and it's kind of awkward for me as well. I'm like, I want to break that. I don't want that, because I have to. I wanted to express that love, and yeah, because it's just not healthy to not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I there's been times I've talked to my dad and asked him, did your parents give you hugs or anything? And he's like, no, like, they've never given me a hug. Never, they won't say "I love you."
Wow.
And so my parents made their fair share of mistakes, but I look back, I'm like, man, I'm really glad, because every night they'd give us a hug, and they'd say they love us. They love me, specifically, but to all my siblings, we would always get a hug.
Just you and not the siblings.
No, just me.
You'd be like John. It's like I'm the one that my parents love.
Yeah, but anyway, so I just think we take for granted even just those little things like a hug or like your parents say that you love you, or even the question of like how are you feeling?
Yeah.
And to never have any not have a parent who asks you that question.
Yeah.
Maybe not even having a friend. They might say like, how are you feeling? But they're not really asking like,
no,
tell me how you're feeling. Or even a culture where you're taught how to find words for how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's another thing too. Like even, you might ask someone, how are you feeling? And a lot of times it's like, I don't even know. Like I'm not in touch in that way.
I don't know how to express it. Yeah.
So anyways, I think you're doing a beautiful job of expressing kind of what you were feeling. It's interesting for you to kind of put yourself back in that in your foot, in your shoes at that time.
Yeah, and it is bringing back a lot of emotions. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say you were acting out, like, what do you mean? I mean, what did that look like? Like you kind of were you were kind of adopting this identity, like kind of like a gangster identity, but also, I kind of get this impression that once again it's kind of like this exile. You're like, I don't belong here, and like I need to wear who I am like on my sleeve. Like I'm a Mexican. I'm not I'm not a Wisconsinite.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame you.
Yeah. No, it's also, again, I think it comes from ignorance, and instead of opening myself up to like make friends and celebrate our diversity and kind of come together, because we're all human beings and we'll have different experiences and value each other because of that. I became kind of a bully, because I think that also stems from the fact that growing up in Mexico up to when I came here, like for a few years in school, like I was also bullied like relentlessly because of my weight. I was always a heavier kid, so I always shoved it down and bottled it up. But I feel like kind of stems from that, like the fact that I became a bully. And I would just love to make fun of people. And that's kind of part of the Mexican culture. Like they find your biggest insecurity and they call you that. That's your nickname. And they make fun of you, and then that's part of it. And that doesn't really carry into the American culture, because all the American friends that I had, they never really wanted to hang out with me because I was that bully and I was making fun of them. The little friends that I could make in high school.
Yeah.
And instead I had like all these other idiots as like me, my friends, like other Mexican friends that would be the same way as I was. But I also, like I said, I never hung out with them outside of high school.
Yeah.
I never had like a social life outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and you kind of mentioned like you wouldn't have called it depression at the time, but now looking back, it was really like a phase of depression.
Yeah.
How long do you think that lasted? Like, do you think that was...
That lasted probably 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I remember they were going to put me in sophomore. Freshman. They were going to put me in freshman, but then I was old enough to be a sophomore. So sophomore and junior, I think those were my depression years. But then senior, I was full gangster. I started rapping. I met a couple of people that were rappers, and we made some music. And but they were also super toxic people. They were just bad influences. Like I remember one of these guys, he went to Milwaukee with a couple of his friends, and they broke into a home, and they stole a gun from this home. And he brought the gun back here to Appleton, and then I remember he lived in Hortonville at the time, so we would go to Hortonville and record. And then he brought the gun, and then he got bullets, and we would just load it up. And then he was out in the country, so we just shoot bullets like up in the air or like at the horizon, just being stupid. And I remember he would load it and kind of point it at us, just like playing. Yeah. But like, looking back, like God really kept me from really being hurt or getting into a really bad situation. Wow. Because that guy was freaking crazy. And to this day, I feel resentment towards him. And I feel like if I saw him, I wouldn't not want to talk to him. But I still like. I feel like I have to forgive him, not from. I feel like I have forgiven him a little bit, but not fully. I still have some resentment towards that guy,
Yeah.
and I got my brother into it, and in a way, I feel like my brother. I influenced my brother terribly in a lot of areas of my life, of his life. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of telling your story, though, is I think, yeah, you can both see the negatives and the positives. And at least when I heard you talking about it, you're like, yeah, my senior year I went full gangster. Like my
Yeah.
depression kind of stopped,
Hmm.
and I started rapping and stuff. And I'd say like, part of it, yeah, probably maybe wasn't the best group, that kind of thing. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm hearing like you found an outlet for expression.
Hmm.
You felt two people that maybe you felt really accepted by.
Yeah.
You found something to kind of put your identity in.
Mm.
Um, and in a way, it's just leading up. It's just kind of carving who you are today, like a
Hmm.
creative person, someone who longs for community.
Mm.
And it's like it's a first peek in that, and that
Huh.
was something that broke it broke your depression in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's one. I'm not trying to turn this into a therapy session, but I think that is just one way to
That's conversation.
But
And it's good to have your input because I never really fully told my story to anybody besides Katie.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's keep on going. So you graduate. You're kind of hanging out with these. Maybe they're a little rambunctious.
Yeah.
Irresponsible
Yeah.
group. I mean, did those friendships continue after high school?
I think in my senior year, I was 2 credits away from graduating, and I dropped out because I was like, I hate it. I hate it here. I don't want to come back to class. I hate getting up in the morning, and I think by that time I was dating a girl from high school, and it was also kind of a toxic relationship. Um, because again, I was like trying to feel looking for love, and also I didn't know how to love or how to behave. Even I felt like I was always kind of socially awkward as well because again, I was taken out of. I think that because back in Mexico, like developing friendships without, I was like a social butterfly. Like I had a lot of friends, but then in here the culture is different and everybody's different, so I didn't know how to behave. So at the same time I didn't have a personality. Like this personality that I have was just like a front, a facade, and it doesn't work when you have a facade. It doesn't work with relationships. And I dropped out and I was dating this girl, and then she got pregnant, but she lost it. And I think she got pregnant a second time, but I think that second time wasn't mine because she was cheating on me with a coworker, and she didn't have the guts to tell me until like later. So I feel like the second one wasn't mine. I don't know. Could have been,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know. I would have 2 kids by now.
Wow. I did not know that,
Yeah,
Alex. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when she told me that she was pregnant the first time, I felt like my life was over. Like I didn't take it well. Instead of being happy for her or for us, I said, F me. That's my life is over. I
Yeah.
was like 18.
Yeah.
And then I told my parents, and I feel like it was the first time I cried in front of my parents, and I tried to hug them. And my mom's response was to start crying also. And my dad's response was, well, fun is over. You're going to have to work now.
Mm.
Like I said, no emotional support whatsoever.
Mm.
Nothing. And like I said, I don't know. I think I don't want to say by the grace of God she lost it,
Mm.
but I felt like for things happen for a reason. I feel like God was keeping me from something, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And at the time I was happy, and like I said, the second time I'm not sure that kid was mine. So, um,
Did she have that child?
the
Or
second one she
yeah.
also lost it. But it was more developed. Like it was like 3 or 4 months.
Oh
I
wow.
remember going to that hospital, and she had to give birth to it, and then She's like, do you want to see it? And I said, no, because I was like terrified. It's like, I don't want to see it. But she did. She said, like, I do want to see it. And she was just crying, crying, crying. And in me not being able to emotionally support her, because still a kid. I'm an 18-year-old kid who doesn't know how to express love or how to support somebody emotionally. I just was there and was like, I don't want to see it. And I just don't understand why you're crying so much. That was my posture.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 4 months. Yeah. So that's, so the child didn't survive after
No.
it was born.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So, okay. So she had that second child. She was cheating on you.
Mm-hmm.
So did that relationship kind of end after
That
that?
ended after that. Yeah.
Wow.
She, I don't blame her. She just kind of abandoned me because, like I said, I was not receptive of any of her feelings. And at the same time, I was like, "Why are you abandoning me?" Because I made her kind of like my emotional support as well. But then she kind of just disappeared. And then one time, I remember one time specifically, she just started ignoring me. And then all of a sudden, she wants to call me again. So I was like, nah. So I ignored all of her calls for like 2 days. And then finally, she just shows up at my house, at my parents' house. And then she's just crying. It's like, why you ignore me so much? And then, I also don't know what to do. So she's crying there. And I just said, okay, well, whatever. I forgive you. Just stop crying. And we kind of went back for like, I don't know, probably like a month. And then after that, it just ended. Yeah, but it was really hard. I remember it was really hard for me because even though it was not a healthy relationship, it was just really hard for me. Like 18 years old, you where your feelings are just everywhere.
Yeah, your first love, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So at that time, is that kind of when you got involved in the kitchen industry, in cooking? Was that kind of when you got, or what was your first job? Like, what was your job at that time?
That was Outback Steakhouse. That was my first job was as a busboy. And then I remember after that, I worked at Golden Corral for, I don't know, I was a server, servers. What does the server do at Golden Corral? Just bring you plates. Yeah. And then after that, I worked at Who Hat on the grill. But when I was working at Who Hat, I was going through all of that with that ex-girlfriend, so I wasn't paying attention at work, so I kind of got fired from there.
Yeah.
And then I started working at Chipotle, and that's when I broke up with her.
Okay.
And I made a friend, a really good friend, my friend Eddie. We met there, and that's after that, like during that, starting at Chipotle, it was right after that girlfriend. So right around that time, I found, after I dropped out, fresh out of high school, then I found some other friends from high school, and we would hang out like every now and then. So this time I have a car, I can go wherever I want. And these people used to hang out with these other friends who were older, like in their mid-20s. So this 18-year-old kids hanging out with this 20-something. And I remember seeing, like, this guy invited us to his house. We were hanging out at George Webb. We used to be George Webb. And they're like, oh, he started talking about, there's a video and talks about like, the secrets of religion and how religion is related to all the signs of the stars and all of this and how like Christianity is made up. So I was curious and I wanted to be cool. So I'm like, oh yeah, let's see it. There was a girl that I wanted to impress and she came and I was like, I'm just, hard ass. I want to impress her. And so we go see the movie, and I remember it was called Zeitgeist. And it just says that Jesus is based on a pharaoh and all of this. Just deception, complete deception. And I believed it all. I was like, yeah, Christianity is stupid. God doesn't exist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then, like, yeah, Jesus is just based on all this other myths, and this is all stupid. And I remember at the time working at Chipotle, there was this Christian couple. And I remember fresh after seeing that, I'm like, I'm just going to destroy them. Like, and I started bringing this up, and they said, no, we are married and we're one flesh, so we have to respect each other. So they were bringing Christian values. They were talking Christian values to me. But I was like, nah, you guys are dumb. Like, you're dumb for believing all this crap. And then, like, again, like, now I have this other personality, like, on top of the rap and all of that. Like, now I'm an atheist. And everybody else is dumb. Like, I'm being enlightened, I have truth.
Yeah. Was it okay? Was it just that one documentary, or was it like was it too like just the people you were around, like that kind of thing, or
The the my experience with the Catholic Church, and plus that was like, okay, religion is dumb.
yeah,
Religion is stupid.
yeah,
Because I have, the Catholic Church didn't have any answers for me, and it was just terrifying, and I was just forced to do these things. And I always said why, but nobody gave me answers. So now I see this documentary that is giving me answers, quote unquote, and I'm thinking, this is the truth. That's why everybody's stupid. That's why people don't question things, and people blindly follow what they are told by the priest.
yeah. Wow, it's interesting that kind of just the timing of that documentary.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, you're dating that girl. You have like, yeah, I guess I don't know. I feel bad calling it like pregnancy, like scare, but it
Yeah.
was hard to find out that she was pregnant. Just the responsibility of becoming a father, all of that, losing the first child, then losing the second. I mean, that's a lot of like really intense life that for an 18-year-old to experience.
Yeah.
And once again, maybe not having that language to describe
Yeah.
what you're feeling.
And I feel like I don't have the capacity to understand what's happening to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just all this stuff kind of just happening.
It's just happening, and I feel like I'm just numb to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you kind of come out of there, you go to Chipotle, and this is when you go and see that documentary.
Yep.
And it's just interesting timing, because I'm sure in a way you were probably looking for some purpose and some
always,
answers.
always, yeah.
But maybe that was kind of just that was the purpose you needed at the time. It was just like to kind of, I don't know, feel smart, feel like what's going on, kind of feel in control.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's this couple at Chipotle, so it sounds like maybe they had an impact on you.
I remember them to this day. What
Yeah.
they told me, yeah. They say that we are one flesh, and we are one. And I didn't understand, because when Christ talks about marriage, is you are one in the flesh, and you become one person. So I just thought they were corny
Okay.
and dumb.
Yeah, kind of write them off.
Yeah.
Okay, now I think this is kind of when I'm a little more familiar with your story. But when did I know there was a guy that you would go over to his house. He worked at
my
Chipotle.
friend Eddie. Yeah.
Okay, so it is your friend Eddie.
Yeah.
No, is this guy who's married also?
No.
Or no, this is
no.
different. Okay, so tell us about Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie. He was older, because I remember I was in my early 20s. I think I was 20 years old by this time.
This is a little after.
Yeah,
a little
like I was
after
19
that Zeitgeist movie and all of
yeah,
that.
a little bit after that. Like, I think I remember I was probably working a year at Chipotle by then, and he shows up, and he's just really easy to talk to, and we just start joking around. We have kind of like the same humor, and I remember the moment I became closer to him was when they were gonna promote him at Chipotle, and I was looking for that promotion, but then they gave it to him, and I was like, screw this guy. But then again, I think God, in God's divine providence, he kind of softened my heart towards him. And what I did, and I know that was God working in my heart, because I would not have done this. I would not have gone to him and be like, hey man, I feel a little jealous that they gave you the promotion instead of me. But instead of, talking trash behind your back, I'm just going to support you. I just wanted to tell you that I was kind of jealous, and instead of making some resentment and making this relationship complicated, I'm going to tell you. And and then he said, thank you, I appreciate that. And we became good friends after that.
Wow.
And I know that it was God, because there's no way that came from me. Like, being the person that I was, that did not come from me. I would have been like, screw this guy, probably quit or get a different job.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's cool. It is. It's kind of like breaking this theme that we're hearing, is maybe that you weren't like, you couldn't find words maybe for your emotions. You know, you didn't really know how to express them. And then here you go up to this guy and you actually just say how you're feeling.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm feeling kind of jealous.
Yep. Yep.
But I don't want it to be weird,
Yep.
Okay, so you guys got close. Did it feel like he kind of took you under his wing kind of thing? I mean, he's a little older.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He was I think he was like late 20s when
Okay.
I met him. And one time I don't remember how we got to just go to his place and we just to like hang out, watch anime because he was into anime a lot too. So we started watching anime, and then they start smoking weed in front of me. And at this time, like I didn't know, like I never really understood that. Like I drank sometimes, but they would smoke weed all the time, and then I was kind of scared of that. But I saw that they were like super chill, so I'm like, I trust these people. It was like Eddie, one of his friends, and then the girl he was dating at the time. So they're all smoking weed, and we're just like watching movies and just hanging out together. And then one day I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I remember, I remember the first time I smoked weed. I remember I smoke it, and I don't remember how many puffs I took. But at some point, we're watching a movie, and I catch myself staring at the blinds on the window, just like
Mm-hmm.
staring at
Mm-hmm.
them. And then I feel like the blinds are kind of like waving. And then I start hearing my heart like beat, and each beat is like a wave. It's like doom, 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 and I feel it expanding from my chest to the rest of my body,
Whoa.
like doom, 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 expanding like doom, doom, doom. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. And all of a sudden, I feel like the blinds are gently brushing my face, like I'm being dragged across the blinds very gently. And I was like, this is trippy. I kind of like it. Yeah. And that was it. I remember being super relaxed, and kind of, it was a little bit trippy because weed has just like mildly hallucinogenic
Yeah.
property, and it makes you like your imagination, and just enhances your thoughts, and I started smoking weed with him like almost on the regular, like 3 or 4 times a week. So I found that click, like I found a click, and I felt like it wasn't toxic. I felt like it wasn't, like I could be myself,
Yeah.
and they would accept me. Like these people would just hang out because they like to hang out with me, and I never knew that before. And we became really really close friends. We would smoke weed all the time, and that's when he started talking to me about Jesus. And I always say, oh no, whatever, man, just doesn't matter. You give me free weed, because he would just let me smoke his weed. And then all of a sudden, one night, I remember specifically one night, because he lived in an apartment, and then he moved to another apartment, like in the same complex, but he moved to like an upstairs. And I remember after that, like we would smoke, and then all of a sudden one night, um, while being high, I remember I always say it like this because this is how it felt. It felt like God was telling me, "Oh, so I'm not real, huh? Let me show you." And then all of a sudden, like I knew again that God was real, and it was a weird experience. It was like enlightening, but at the same time, it's like, I'm gonna keep living my life. Okay, God is real, whatever. And then again, while smoking weed, I it came to the realization that Jesus is real, and the whole purpose of life is to get to know Him.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I kept getting drunk, I kept partying, I kept smoking. So even though I have this realization in me, I finally say, okay, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So give me a picture though, because I'm trying to imagine. Okay, are you just like sitting? Are you all just kind of sitting in the room, just high, and are you guys talking like conversa? Is he talking about Jesus? Is this
He's
when you're thinking these things, or is it just like silence?
no,
Or
to me, like to this, he's been talking to Jesus probably about a year, to me, and I became curious. I was
yeah.
like, okay, tell me about this Jesus guy. What else did he do? And then he would quote Bible verses, like in our conversation. And I remember a special King Solomon, when he had that dream, and God was like, "Well, what do you want?" And then he said, "What I want wisdom, because I don't know what to do." And that struck a chord with me.
Hmm.
And I said, "Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Like I want wisdom. Like I don't want to be rich. I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to. I just want to understand you, God. I just want to understand. Like give me wisdom to get through life." That was my
Hmm.
request. And I feel like that's when God started like revealing more things to me. And then all of a sudden, like, it was during a moment of silence because we would just watch a movie, we would smoke, we would have conversations, and then you smoked weed before.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes like you all smoke weed and you're all so high that everybody's just quiet, just like staring or like thinking. It was during like one of those times that I was like,
Yeah.
God is real.
Just like something clicked.
Yeah.
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 Wow. So first time it clicks that God's real. And then it was another time you said that it just clicked where it was like Jesus is real.
The purpose of life is to know Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like the words you use with that. Like it's so simple. Purpose of life is to know Jesus more.
Yeah.
And do you think you would have used those same words like at that time?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, that didn't come from me.
Yeah.
Because I always think of the gospel. The gospel is simple. The gospel is trust in Jesus Christ, who came, is the Son of God, who came and died for your sins. Accept that gift. That is simple. And I feel like I always wonder what's the purpose of life. Because I remember also before in my atheist phase, I thought, well, Christianity has failed me. But something yearning in my heart, I was still looking for that deeper meaning in my life.
Yeah.
I knew this guy who was also a rapper before, and then he became like a devout Muslim. And then I asked him, so what happened to you? Like, you don't rap anymore? And he was wearing like the typical Muslim attire and like the hat. And like, he's like, oh no, man, like all I do now is pray and like get to know Allah and all of this. And then I was like, tell me about Islam. And he didn't tell me much, but then he gave me a DVD and he said The Purpose of Life on it. I never watched it. I just put it on. I was like, okay, well, I told him Christianity has not been making sense to me, so I want to look into Islam. But I never did. I never did. And also, when I had that revelation, I was thinking, so then what is the purpose of life? Because I thought the title of that DVD, The Purpose of Life. But then, like, again, when I was getting really high, and then I felt like that came to my mind. I was like, well, then what is the purpose of life? And that was when I was like, the purpose of life is to know Christ.
Yeah, we're filling in so many good pieces here, man, because I think, I mean, I've never known, just some of these details.
Yeah.
Even that you had an atheist phase. I find that really interesting. And then also, now I want to just trace back just a little, because it's like you said the story of Solomon. And him asking for wisdom and that resonating with you.
Yeah.
Like, what I want is wisdom.
Yeah.
And I mean, that I think was another probably awakening for you, is that you were realizing that you desired wisdom. I mean, ever since I've known you, I think I've never thought of those words, but I'm like, yes, you are someone who desires wisdom. Like, you're always thinking, you're always searching for wisdom to understand the workings of the world and how things happen, right? So, yeah, okay. So you had this kind of like, I don't know, things clicking, right?
Yeah.
Are you still working at Chipotle at this point?
Yeah, I'm still working at Chipotle. I think I worked there for almost 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, what happened with your friendship with Eddie? Like, did it just kind of naturally, fizzle out?
No, we stayed friends the whole time when I was working at Chipotle, like really, really close friends. I would just call him because we used to party a lot, and we started throwing parties, and we started becoming popular with people. Like, people knew us as the party guys. And I remember loving that part of my life because we would just get wasted, and get drunk. And I remember like inviting quite a few girls that I had crushes on and invited them to the parties. But at the same time, I still this part of me that doesn't know how to really act or have like an interaction with a woman. Because I feel like that part of me was still kind of broken. But I'm like hiding now behind this facade also. Like, I left that that gangster facade, and then I kind of got into rock and like emo rock, and then like hipster music, and I'm looking for my personality. I'm looking for who I am. And at this point, I'm like this douche party guy, and that's who I am. And I try to impress the girls, like, oh yeah, I drink a lot and I party all the time. And I remember the girl that I was trying to impress at the time, she was like a super shy kind of girl, but For some reason, I'm always kind of attracted to the shy girls for some reason.
Yeah.
But she thought that I was. I remember looking back now, like I knew that she kind of liked me back, but I messed it up by being a douche completely. Like I just messed it up. She could have dated me, but just my own personality, my own issues, and not that I regret not doing those things. I love Katie. If you're listening, I love you. I'm happy where I'm at now, but looking back, now we are this party guys again, and we stayed really close together until then. By the end of my Chipotle career, he gets a girlfriend, and things start changing. Like he starts, paying more attention to her, and he leaves Chipotle, and then we hang out a little bit less, and then I leave Chipotle, and then we hang a little bit less. Then I get my job at my actual. I feel like that's when I start my culinary career. This is like 2011. I'm like 22, something like that, and I get that job at that restaurant, and we kind of just drifted apart, Eddie and I.
Yeah. Just a natural drifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's amazing how some friendships, it's just your paths cross at the perfect time, and whatever needed to be, learned and experienced was.
Yeah.
And also just like, I think sometimes, people God uses is, I don't know, it's always a surprise.
Yeah.
And some people, some Christians might hear that, and they're like, oh my gosh, this like pothead, you guys would be smoking weed, watching anime.
Yep.
And that's how you found out about Jesus, or at least it was the beginning of your your relationship with him. Mm-hmm. Just those unexpected places that you wouldn't expect maybe to see Jesus. Yeah. So okay. So you kind of now you've drifted away from Eddie. You're working. You're starting your culinary career now. Yeah. I don't know, for the listeners, you certainly had a big portion of your 20s that you were very passionate about cooking. About food. Yeah.
Early 20s to probably early late 20s.
Yeah. Is that like was that kind of another phase, or like another maybe like search for identity kind of thing? Like did you kind of move out of that like party dude kind of vibe?
I continued.
You continued
there.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I think that was my personality for a long time. Like, was the party guy. From like that Chipotle, from like my 21 through like, I think by the time I was 26, like I partied really hard. Like there's some nights that I don't know how I made it home. Like I just wake up in my bed and like I don't remember how I got here. Like, and again, I feel like with the grace of God, God's providence, like he got me through the things that, because I remember one time it was New Year's Eve, and the bar stayed open really late, and my friends went to a concert in Milwaukee that I couldn't go to because I worked that day. They made me work, so like, and I hated it. It's like I'm missing out on a concert. It was Skrillex. Like I wanted to see Skrillex on New Year's Eve, but then I couldn't go because I had to work. So I went downtown by myself, and I thought I'll find somebody. And I remember getting so drunk. It was like 4 a.m. because most of the bars stayed open until 6 a.m. It was New Year's Eve. And I remember getting so drunk that I thought that I could go to a different bar in a different city, like in Appleton to Nina. Like, I'll go to Nina, I'll find friends there. Because at this point, I didn't find anybody who I could stick with and drink with. I saw people that I knew, but I didn't see somebody to actually drink with. So at this point, I remember thinking, I'm really drunk, and I remember thinking, I'm going to go to this other bar. And then blacking out and kind of getting a little bit of my wits back while I'm driving on the highway. And my GPS says 90 miles to destination. I don't know where I'm going. And something tells me, you should go home. And then I remember putting an address on my GPS that I know, I think it was the exclusive company, the good company downtown. And then, because I'm like, I don't know where I am. I know I'm on the highway, but I don't know where I am. And I remember I'll follow this and blacking out again, and then waking up in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Okay, so that time, the period of just like partying a lot, it went on for a while.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, if you could put yourself, yeah, in your shoes there, I mean, do you think, yeah, why do you think it was? I mean, partly that identity thing, like that's kind of where you found your people, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, was there, I mean, what was it looking like in your spiritual world? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like in that kind of some of those epiphanies you had with Eddie,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. Like what was also kind of in, you know, I don't know, I guess following that
Yeah.
time, you know.
I feel like that's probably, even though I feel like I was better than when I was in high school, I feel like I was also numb to other things. Like I felt like that was my personality, and I always felt like, well, I don't care, I don't care about anything was kind of like my motto. Like I just want to party, I just want to have fun. You only live once, you only young once, you have to enjoy your life. And that was my mentality for a long time. And I met Katie during those years, working at the Wild Truffle, and we kind of started dating. And then I started taking it to the bars because she was 20, so I knew enough bouncers around town to get her in.
Hmm.
So I started taking her to bars before she was old enough to drink, and getting her drinks. And then she was like super innocent and shy again, drawn to the innocent shy girls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I showed her the what it is to party and get drunk and have fun, because she was also kind of sheltered, so she appreciated that in me. I think she saw that it's like, oh, this guy's cool. Finally my game is working. Like girls think I'm cool. So that continued. Then I got out of the Wild Truffle. Then I got a job at Airfire Mobile, answering calls. And then I started working at Presto Products because I hated answering calls. And then I started working at a factory. I was working at a factory for 2 years. And then, even though I continued this lifestyle, even though while dating Katie, this lifestyle was getting drunk like 3-4 times a week, because that's where I found meaning. That's where I found like, oh, if you have fun, that's all you need. And I was working a lot and making more money that I could spend. So I was always drinking and like inviting people to drink. And I remember through all of this, when I was especially working long hours at a factory, you're always doing the same thing over and over. And I remember thinking, God, make me the person that you created me to be. Because I heard somebody else say that.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, you know what? I want that. I want God. I still want God, in my life. But then, I don't know, I called myself a Christian again, but I didn't know who Christ was. Like I know that the purpose was to follow Christ, but who is Christ? What's the point? You don't know Christ, you don't know what you're doing. And I remember praying that. I was like, God, make me the person you created me to be. And thinking, and always praying that, make me the person you created me to be. Until God moves. And I remember still working at Presto. And all of a sudden, I start overanalyzing everything. Like I let my mind wander. I let my mind go deep. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, it's really weird that I'm sitting here. It's like you're looking at your life and where you're at and the meaning in it. And then I started panicking. Like it started turning into a panic attack. Because when I feel like when you don't have the guidance of the Word of God, and you open your heart to meaning, to trying to make sense of the world, I think that Satan is like, hell yeah, here we go. Somebody who's looking. So I feel like that's when I was stripped of everything. I was stripped of my personality. I was stripped of my peace. I was stripped of my meaning. I was stripped of everything that made sense. All of this wisdom that I gained when I was like smoking weed and while like hearing Bible passages, and I thought I was so wise, and I thought I was so smart. I was stripped of all of it. I had a panic attack. It was really bad, and I remember thinking that I was dying. All what I'm working, I'm still keeping up with a machine, and I'm like thinking, what is going on? I thought I was having a stroke. I thought I was dying, and that made me really scared. Like I had a hard time driving. And at that point, it was hard for me to work at the at Presto for the machine because I would be by myself and just with my thoughts. My thoughts would just go crazy, thinking about the craziest things. And I remember at some point, I remember like, what is this anxiety? Like, I don't know what that is because I'm having a panic attack, but I don't know that I'm having a panic attack, and I'm just feeling awful. And then all of a sudden, I feel like so anxious all the time. And then one of my friends at the time, she said that she was struggling with suicidal ideation. And then all of a sudden, like that comes to me. It's like, what if you hurt yourself? What if you kill yourself? It just terrified the crap out of me. Like I didn't know. I never no voice told me kill yourself, but the voices were telling me you have the power to. And that made me really terrified of being alone. And that at that point, we're moving out of my parents' house and getting an apartment because Katie really wanted for us to live by ourselves, have a place. And I was just terrified. I'm like, I don't want to get a place because I'm gonna be by myself, and I don't want to be by myself because I don't want to know what I could do if I'm by myself. So we move. We still move, and I'm not happy about it. And I feel like that period of us living together was the worst for our relationship. We were not loving. We were not respecting each other. We did not have God in our life. And when you don't have God in your life, when you don't have the love of God, you don't know how to love. You don't know. You don't even love yourself. And that was probably the hardest, most anxious, the hardest part of my life so far. And that lasted for a long time. And then I left Presto Products and I started working at SAP because I said I cannot be alone. Like I need something else. Like this, I try to blame my feelings on my job. Like if I change jobs, I'll probably be okay. So, the good part about changing and started like cooking again was that I was always with somebody else, and you can bounce off your energy with other people. So because I've always been a people person.
Yeah.
And that's when I started gaining some of my confidence back. Because at first, like I had no confidence. I didn't know who I was. I had no peace. Like I said, I was stripped of everything. And then I feel like, is God mad at me or something? Because, all of this confidence that I had, all this knowledge that I had, it's gone. I cannot use it anymore. Like nothing makes sense. I just knew deep in my heart that God was going to get me through it. I just knew that. Like this seems like hell right now, but I know that it's not going to be forever. But instead of looking for this word, like I said, I was looking for other things. Like, okay, I stopped drinking because I was so anxious. Like I stopped partying. I became kind of like a recluse. And I think at that point I started drawing again, and I started finding my solace in porn and drawing pornographic drawings. And then I'm thinking, well, this is my new personality. I do adult drawings. I try to justify it, try to minimize it, try to make it, oh, I'm an artist now. And it helped because he got an outlet for me to draw and all of this. God works everything for the better. And at this point, like I said, my relationship with Katie is at the worst. We're still together. We feel like we love each other, but we don't know how to show it. We don't know how to express it to each other. We tried. We try to be good to each other, but at the same time, I feel like we both went like, is this it? Could I do better? And then after that, she tried to go to, she got a job at Yellowstone, and I'm thinking, now she wants to leave me alone, and I was terrified of being alone. But then I didn't stop her. Like, you want to go work in Yellowstone? Do it. Do it. Do it for you. Then I moved back to my parents' house, and right before that, right before moving, I remember one time waking up because I had the hardest time sleeping. I had such anxiety that I would start falling asleep, and then right when you start relaxing, I would feel like I'm gasping for air. Right before falling asleep, I would go like, that much I could not fall asleep like by myself. It took me forever. And I remember one day waking up, and there was a hallway out of our room, and then there's the bathroom to the right, and then another room to the left, and then the living room. And then from the the window of the room was coming, like the sunlight was coming, and it was illuminating in front of me. And I remember seeing the light and thinking about God, like seeing this light and thinking, God, why don't you help me? Like, what? How long am I gonna suffer? Like, why are you not here? And I remember hearing, well, don't talk to me. You don't come to me. And that's what it kind of clicked. I need to go to him, because if I don't want him, he's not going to force me to follow him. And that was kind of like the beginning of my healing, because after that I said, I like, okay, God, I don't know how to do this, but I need you. I don't even know. I don't know what's going on with me, but I need you. And then Katie left. We moved back, and I started working at. I left SAP, and then this was after Arthur's Kitchen, actually. You know, the first Arthur's.
Yeah.
You know, we were working there,
Yeah.
and yeah, during that time,
You're in your late or early 30s at this point,
late 20s.
Late 20s.
Yeah. Late 20s, probably 28.
Okay.
And then Katie leaves, living in my parents' house. Then Arthur's Kitchen burns down, and then I go to Green Lake, an hour from here. I was working there as a cook, and I remember on one of the days, I got done with work early, and I'm driving back home, and I see the sunset, and then again, like the light, it makes me think of God. And then I remember after all this thinking, because I at that point I'm starting thinking about my own mortality. I'm thinking like, I'm gonna die, like that's guaranteed. I'm gonna die, and I start freaking out, like what's gonna be of me? Like where am I gonna go? Like am I going to hell? Am I going to heaven? I'm not sure.
Hmm.
And then like being terrified of Katie leaving, so all these things start piling up, like all these deep feelings, and I don't know what to do. And then I reach out for friends, and they don't have answers, and it's just hard. Like I remember this guy that I work with, the chef that hired me. He actually sat there and listened to me. He's not. He doesn't. I don't think he's an atheist, but he also doesn't believe in anything religious. But then he said, there's feelings you have to. He gave me the wolf analogy. It's like, what are the feelings? The good feelings or the bad feelings? Which ones are stronger? So the wolf that you feed the most. The darkness or the light. And I remember like listening to that, but like that doesn't make sense. Like how can I feed the good thoughts if I don't have any?
Hmm.
And I remember like driving back and then seeing the sunset, and all of a sudden feeling peace for the first time in a long time, probably years, and thinking, if I only have you, God, that's enough for me. That's enough. But I want to feel you. Like I need you. And I think that's when God started reaching for me, because he knew that I was open for him, and he knew that I was looking for him. So that's when he started reaching back. Well, that's when he started extending his hand. But like, okay, you want me, then I'll be there. That's why I always say, like, if you feel that God is distant, ask him to be there, and he's going to show up. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're into the timeline that I know you.
Yeah.
Like we were friends at this time. It's interesting because maybe my memories are not the best, but I just don't remember. Yeah, I don't. I guess I don't know if I was aware that you were going through some of that, like some of that existential crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think you were open with people about it?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I feel like up to recently, I've reached to him to actually dig deep in my heart and heal me from those parts. Because I would not been able to tell you that I had those thoughts before, like thoughts of me having the power to hurt myself.
Mm-hmm.
I could have not told you that 6 months ago. Because when we are depressed, when we have this anxious feelings, I feel like we feel like we're the only ones, and we feel like nobody's gonna relate, and we feel like um, they're gonna shut us down or we're gonna be made fun of. But it's not. The devil uses the same tricks on all of us, and when he tries to get us to despair, so we don't trust our Father. So we drive. So we we just separate from Him. That is his objective, to not go to Him. All of those lies that you get in your head is like, oh, you shouldn't go to God for this. That's a lie. You go to God for everything. As little or big, you go to Him for everything.
Yeah. So you start going to God. You start praying to Him more, maybe more. You start asking Him for help more often. And I mean, I'd also, one thing that I remember you telling me about. I mean, your relationship with church was kind of, I guess, a little rocky. Like, you didn't really, I mean, once again, we talked about the Catholic Church, relationship to Catholic Church growing up. But then, it was just, you kind of, you felt like you didn't really maybe need church, that kind of thing. And then I remember you telling about kind of one bad experience at a church. Like when I met you at SAP, and then I think at Authors, I remember we got talking about it, and you were like, yeah, I was going to this one church for a while, but it was. You want to talk about that?
It was during that period of really deep anxiety. Like I didn't know what to do. It was like earlier in that phase that I went to this church, and then they said, if you need us to pray for you, like get in a line, and then you come, and then we pray for you. And then I remember getting in that line because I'm like, I need God, like I need prayer. And I get in the line, and I finally get to the guy who's praying over people. And then he's like, what do you want me to pray for? And then I said, I have this deep anxiety, and I don't know what to do with it. It's consuming me. It's bad. I know right now I'm articulating those words better, but at the same, probably at the time it didn't come out as clear as now, because it was just overwhelming. And the first thing he does is like, oh, we pray over this guy, Alex, that any of his addictions, like he's like, I don't have any addictions. I'm just anxious and despairing. But at the same time, I was probably an alcoholic, because I'm drinking so much. But at this point, I'm not drinking because of my anxiety. Like my anxiety doesn't let me drink. So I get this sense of this guy's just being condescending in a way, and you just, oh, this guy's an addict, because that's one of the first things he said, like, oh, help him with any addiction and any. But I guess he was just probably just saying a general prayer. I don't know, but that rubbed me the wrong way. And then I never went back to that one, and also that was my search for churches. Like I tried different churches, and then nothing really felt like home or that I belonged.
Nothing clicked. Yeah. Was that when you were still working at the factory when that happened?
Thanks. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you kind of, you go to SAP, and I don't know how long you were there before.
3 years.
Before Authors and Kitchen and Bar.
Yeah,
which is where right around that time that we met.
Yeah.
And so then you're working at Green Lake. You and Katie have moved out of your apartment.
She's living in Yellowstone for 3 months.
Yep. And you're still dealing with a lot of anxiety. So I'm curious but you feel like you're bringing it more to God. You almost got that word from Him, like, bring it to me. How did because at least from my perspective, I noticed when you started going to church that started to become a big an important thing in your journey. Yeah. So, tell me about that. Like, when did that happen? Like, what timeline?
It was. I remember it was a little bit before COVID that one of my friends invited me to go to the core where I go now. They're like, "Oh, you want to come to a church?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll check it out," because I'm looking for a church. Like at this point, I'm open to listening to the Word of God. Like I want to know God. I want to know who Jesus is, but still never reading the Bible or anything like that. So I get invited to that church, and I said, "Okay, cool, yeah, let's do it." So I go to the church, and then I hear Pastor Mike, and the way he breaks down the Bible. And then all of a sudden I feel like, wow, like this is like therapy. Like I felt like every sermon was specifically talking to me. I feel like, wow, this is the word of God. And then I want more. And then COVID hit. And then that's when they shut down the church. You couldn't go to church anymore. And then you had to do it online. And right around that time, they were like, do you want to take this class that, it's like the starting point class. So we dive deeper into the Bible, and then we explain the beginning, the end, and the question of evil, the question of baptism, and all of this. And I was like, yeah, I'm all in. Like, I want to know more. And then I take that class during COVID. Then I become a member, and that's when things start just to, like, God just starts to speak to me. And I remember still at this point, like, I remember, like, when I got those feelings again, I didn't know about Christian influencers at the time. So I would just go on Instagram, and then I followed this one guy from Venezuela who preaches the gospel. And then I remember, like, hearing he didn't do reels because I think TikTok became big. So then they had reels on Instagram, but they had lives on Instagram. So they were like 12, 13 minutes that he would go live and preach. And I was like, I love this. I want more. And it would just, I remember listening to him, and he was preaching the gospel, and I would just start bawling and crying and feeling like I'm getting healed, feeling like I'm drinking water for the first time. Like I've been thirsty my entire life, and I'm finally drinking water. And I'm like, I want more. I want more. And then I become like, I start going to the church more and more. And that's when I start seeing, like, I feel like God just starts healing me. Like, I don't even remember when I started changing, but God just, like, completely gave me a new heart. And that's when, that was, like, a little bit after COVID that I became a member. And then I've been going to the core ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like a magic fix. Like you're never anxious anymore.
No, not at all.
Everything's good, right? But
yeah.
But I mean, I think just listening to your story, it sounds like you were longing for structure, you were longing for wisdom, and it seemed like maybe one missing piece was that you maybe never had that guidance.
Mm.
Like you maybe had, you had like Eddie, you had people you could talk with that once again you could kind of like talk about these ideas, but it was also abstract. And you're kind of like sitting there like, okay, I'm here, I believe, like I'm ready to go, but nobody really like gave you a like, okay, here's the path.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you can read.
Yeah.
Here's what you can kind of do to learn more, that kind of thing. And then unfortunately, when you were going to churches, you didn't really find that,
No.
Until going to the core.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just, I mean, that structure just seems like it was so needed, just for your journey. Yeah. Where do you see, like, where do you see the future? Like, where do you see your future? What do you think is the next step, like, for you right now?
Actually, I feel like I'm in the middle of my next step from, like, let's say a month ago, like, because I've been, when you have, like, you're familiar with anxiety, you're familiar with that kind of stuff. Sometimes it comes back, and it creeps in your heart. It's like, okay, what if you're still this person? What if, the darkness is still there, and it's never gone, and it's part of you?
Yeah.
And I've had those thoughts, and then I finally became sick of it, like, completely. And not in a way that I was, like, despairing, but I became angry with it. And I said, Lord, I'm annoyed with this crap. And then realizing, and I feel like this is Christ just telling me that I cannot go in there myself and take it out and give it to him. But I have to open my heart and let him go in and take it out. Let him go and heal me.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, God, I still don't know. Like I still struggle with this. I know he's healed me so much, and then he's changed me. He's giving me a new heart. But that part of me that's still there still nags me at some, like it's not as strong as before, but every now and then it creeps back and it bums me out, and it makes me not makes me trust him less, and it makes me anxious. It's not productive. It's not a good feeling. It's not edifying. And anything that is not edifying, anything that is doesn't give you peace, doesn't come from God. It comes from the enemy. So I finally said, Lord, you go in there and take it out of me. And you don't know. Sometimes we don't know what we pray for. And then when I said, Lord, go take it out of me, he started to. And all of these things started coming back. Like I felt like a month ago I've told you, like through text, I've been the most anxious I've been in years. And it's all of this coming back to the surface and Jesus taking it out completely. And it's coming back to the surface instead of, because I had it all like kind of hide it, because I feel like now I feel like if I have to hide it from God, it's probably not good, and I have to ask him to take it out. But because I feel if I have to conceal it, then it's deeply rooted, and only he can deal with it, not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally said, Lord, take it out. I open my heart and take it out. You go in there and take it out. And that's when a lot of the anxious feelings come back. And I feel like that's when the enemy comes and starts attacking me again with the same old tricks, masks, or like the same old trick wrapped in a different wrapper. Because I had that, that anxious feeling of like, oh, you could hurt yourself. That's just a lie from the enemy. It's like you have the power. Of course you have the power, but that doesn't come from the enemy. God, we are so precious to God that he sent his only son to die for us instead of us, to pay for our inequities, to heal us. That's how precious your life is. When the enemy tells you your life is meaningless, that you could take it, that is a lie. That is 100% a lie. And it comes now. The anxieties that are coming back are like, because I always have this anxiety about my own health. So if I feel a little bit off, I feel like something's really wrong with me, and I always try to take care of it myself. Like, oh, if I take these vitamins, if I do this, if I do that. But it's just a feeling that keeps creeping. And I said, God, you take care of my health. You take care of me. I want to trust you instead of these lies that I'm believing. I'm sorry for believing in the wrong things. And sometimes, even to this day, sometimes they creep back. And I said, God, sorry for believing those things. Sorry for believing in the wrong things. And sorry for believing in lies. And I'll send you a testimony of this woman who dealt with anxiety her entire life, and how she now, every time she has those thoughts, instead of dwelling in the thought, he dwells on how Christ looks at us. It's like, okay, well, if I have this anxiety that I cannot control this, I put it on God that he can control everything, because he does. And especially now that we went to Utah, I feel like that I had a wave of anxiety again. That right when I was doing this amazing hike to Delicate Arch, I'm doing this, and all of a sudden I hit with this wave of anxiety and darkness, saying like, okay, there might be something wrong with you, boy. I feel like that is the same old lie, the same old trick. There might be something wrong with you, man. And thinking, and I remember taking it, and instead of me carrying it all the way to the Delicate Arch, I gave it to right there and then to God, and I said, God, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do. I just know that I have to keep going and trust you. And I felt like God was like, then keep going and trust me. And that's when it hit me. I have to keep going and trust him. That's what I need to. I have to keep going and trust me, because I've been blessed with this job. I have some responsibilities. At my church, I have a life group. I do the chalkboard. I have this podcast. I have a DJ. I help the guys at Arthur's Kitchen every now and then. God has blessed me with all these things in my life that sometimes I look at them and I'm like, I'm so busy. Why can't I just quit one? Why do I have so many things going on? But it's a blessing that God has given me. Before I didn't have much to do. Now God has blessed me with all these things. And then I complain that I'm too busy. So now what I learned, what God taught me right there in the desert was literally in the desert while I was in the desert. He taught me, keep going and trust me. So now like I brought that back from that trip because I in a way I felt like I wasn't enjoying it like the first time I went because this trip wasn't about me just going to see the beautiful things. I feel like this trip was about me and God and be like I want to show you here in this place that you really like that I created that you really love. I'm going to show you that you have to trust me and keep going. So I felt like that was one of my next steps and now I feel like I'm more on fire and now that we have to keep feeding that fire with the word of God. It's like, any fire, you don't put more wood in it, it's going to go off and it's going to become colder and it's going to, there's going to be some embers, but you throw the word of God in there, you keep letting back on fire and not just relying on the fact that I feel like this, not relying on my own emotion, not relying on anything other than God. Because even if I am feeling all bummed out, it doesn't matter because that's not my God. My God is the God who raises the dead. My God is the God of the universe. And I will not rely on my own feelings because he is there. He's superior to all of that. So that's I think that is the next step that God has been teaching me in this past week and a half. Yeah.
I hear this once again, just kind of going back to some of the benefits of sharing our story is walking through all these steps of your life.
Yeah.
And all of these things are pieces of you. They're moments that you lived, and they're even pieces of your heart and maybe grooves that have been made. And I think sometimes the way we see ourselves is a lot different than how God sees us.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think God saw you through all of that as someone that he loves, longs for, as a beloved child, right? And so I think it sounds almost like you're coming to this point where some of the past, some of those things are kind of bubbling up again. It's really easy to kind of push it down or try and hide. But I think we even talked about this in the podcast we did about my story. But the question in the garden, where did you go? And Adam replies with, I hid because I was afraid. And I think that the work towards wholeness, towards fullness, towards even that word we talked about before we started the podcast, shalom, right?
Yeah.
Total peace, total restoration. I think that comes from bringing all aspects of ourselves, all aspects of our story, and surrendering it to God, but also realizing that God is blessing it. God is making you whole. God is saying, I love the full you. I love who you are, Alex.
Yeah.
And I love all aspects of your story. And I love how you've gotten here, where you're going. And I find it inspiring just that drive you have to trust God, to trust God with these anxieties, these fears, to trust God with the past you, the present you, the future you. Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful story, Alex, and it's not over.
It's not over.
Thank
you. Thank you for saying that because I look back and I listen to this podcast about testimonies, and some people have amazing stories, and I was thinking I don't have that. I don't have an amazing story. But you look back and God gives everybody an amazing story.
Yeah. All of these moments, all of these different, I don't know, I just get this like taste of all these different hungers. You're on this like the search, right? And faced with anxieties, hard experiences for 18-year-old, hard experiences for a 14-year-old, having to move, not having a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things make for such a great story, Alex. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All for his glory.
Amen.
Yeah. Now looking back, I wouldn't change it because God has used it, and I feel like that podcast that I did with my friend Wes, he's always talking about providence, and then he said he's meditating on that, and providence, faith, they make sense backwards, looking back. Yeah,
Very true.
yeah.
Very true.
So yeah, and to answer for the future, I don't know. I don't know what the future is, but I trust God that it's gonna be good, even when it gets bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Great. Well,
yeah,
I think I don't have any more questions.
yeah.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to share that you think we maybe missed?
No, I think I mean we're about an hour and a half.
I think we covered. I think
Yeah.
we covered at least most of the bases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've never been like interviewed like this and actually sit here and actually think about my story. And a lot of feelings came back, and it's not a bad feeling, but kind of looking at it and saying, "Oh, okay, I kind of understand a little bit better." Like now with the grace that God has given me and looking myself back with grace, it just shows how amazing God is, how Jesus loves you,
Yeah.
and how you have to give yourself grace. Like if you're in a bad situation, the listener, just give yourself grace and know that God is there with you, and trust Him, and ask for Him, ask questions, ask Him all the questions that you have, and He will answer all of the desires of your heart. Trust Him, pray to Him, talk to Him. I always have this new prayer that I always pray because I do prayer for my group, and I pray in public a little bit more now that I used to. And I always say, help us want to be as close to you as you want to be to us. Just to get to know and just to know how loving He is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing goes to waste. There was this image that was coming into my head as you were just kind of talking about this like present moment you're in right now. It's like nothing goes to waste. And right now I'm composting for the first time. I have in my life, and it's like take all the organic matter and just like I don't know, produce, cuttings and leaves and grass and all that, and we just like stick it in this bucket. And but I kind of think about how in a way our lives are a bit like that. We have all these parts of ourselves that kind of might get rotten or stinky or whatever, and I think God is like asking for us to give it to Him, but it's like it doesn't go to waste. Like it can turn into fresh soil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
help us grow.
there's even some things that you can't put in the compost. There's some things that are more artificial, which I also think is kind of an interesting kind of parallel. It's just like a sticker, like a plastic sticker on an orange or something. You got to take that off and throw that out.
Yeah.
So it's just like maybe there's certain parts that do need to just like kind of, that's just an artificial. It's not really who you are.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you need to let go of. But then I think a lot of it is that true substance, but sometimes it's just it needs to be given to God so that it can decompose and become new fresh soil, so that you can begin to grow your garden and see your gifts sprout.
Wow, I love that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I've seen another picture, and it's the typical picture of like the pretty road leads you to hell, but the ugly one leads you to salvation. And the pretty part is there's like this demon's like, oh, come in, it's like a huge party, come in, it's beautiful, and there's the golden floor and everything. And then on the other side is like a rundown wall, and it's like a crust, and there's a bunch of trash all around it. And then you see somebody who's looking at it, who's looking through the crust and then letting go of their trash. So that's why there's like all this trash around this crust before they go in. Like you leave it there, like leave it at the cross. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, great. Do we want to do the fact?
Absolutely. You have something fun?
Well, it's sort of fun. It's kind of something I've learned recently.
Okay. All right. Fun facts. Now let's end the podcast with fun facts with Seth and Alex.
All right. Fun fact. Well, kind of on the topic of soil, compost, I've been reading this book, and it's talking about the two words in the creation story in Genesis. And you've got Adam, which we sometimes think of as the man, the male. Eve being the woman, but also Adam in Hebrew can just mean human, or humanity.
Yeah.
And Adam is the word, kind of translated, and then Adamah is the word for soil, soil or dust. And Adam was brought out of the soil, out of the dust, and the names are so similar. We are from soil, along with the animals and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. From dust, how does that go? From dust you come, to dust you shall return.
From dust we came, to dust we will return.
That's right. All right. Thank you for interviewing me today.
Hey, it was my pleasure, Alex.
Yeah.
This was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. We need to do this again. Yeah. Thank you. And for the listener, again, I like to always remind you that if you want Jesus in your life, if you want meaning, if you want purpose, if you want healing, call on his name and he's going to show up. That is a guarantee. He's listening. He's never far away from you. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Seth, for interviewing me.
You bet.
All right. Thank you. I will see you next time.